It is my favorite time of the year where I wrap up my top 10 books. 2024 was a bit of a whirlwind year for me. I did get married in August, so the majority of my year was kind of spent stressed planning my wedding. I would say I definitely was not as consistent in my booktube content as I would like to be, and one of my goals in 2025 is to be more consistent with booktube and just truly get back to my roots. And the other goals that I have are to continue to read down my physical TBR. I have a series coming called the TBR Card Diaries that I actually have been filming for a while, and I'm, getting ready to post some of those, and I'm really, really excited. I've actually just been having so much fun focusing on the books that I actually purchased because I knew I was gonna love them, and you will see more of that soon. And some of the books that I have read in that vlog series that I filmed at the end of last year will appear on this list here. The other thing that I want to focus on in 2025 is finishing series that I have already started. That kind of goes hand in hand with my TBR Cart Diaries because a lot of them are books that I've purchased because I liked the first book in the series and I'm collecting the series. Others are just series that I'm reading on my Kindle. Most of them are fantasy romance. I'm just gonna say this right now. Pretty much the entirety of this list, with the exception of one entry, is fantasy romance. That I just am a fantasy romance girl. That's what I like, and there's no shame in it, and it's just what it's gonna be. So with that being said, let's get started. I will say for this particular list, I am grouping books together if they are in the same series, because to me they kind of just all blur together in my mind anyways if I read multiple entries in the series in the same year. So we're gonna start. I do have some honorable mentions I want to go through quickly, and then we'll get into the meat and the potatoes, which is my top 10. First honorable mention is Storm of Secrets and Sorrow and Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance by Melissa K. Rorick. This is a dark fantasy romance series, but oh my god, is it just a whirlwind. It's so much fun. You don't know whether to hate or love the main characters, and it really just takes you on this insane journey. I read books 2 and 3. I do need to pick up the 3rd book at some point this year, but I did read it on my Kindle. This series is just crazy. We're basically in this world where the legacy are kind of like a level above the fae, and the fae are subservient to the legacy and such that the heirs will pick a fae and make them their source, which is almost kind of like a slave bond where like they have to obey the legacy that they are bound to. And we're following Tessa, who wants nothing to do with that and gets bound to the heir to the like house of death essentially. But you just go on this insane journey. I will say I think the first book was still my favorite, which is why this is only in my honorable mentions, but I feel like the finale of the series is going to be absolutely crazy, and I cannot wait to see where the series goes. And definitely check the trigger warnings. But if you are okay, like if you want a marriage of a regular fantasy romance and a dark romance, this is your girl. Definitely check out this series. Next book is Beyond the Aching Door. This is a series I still need to finish. It is a duology, but I just found this so fresh and interesting. We are following Reagan, who is a 30-year-old journalist, and her father disappeared when she was younger. They were very close, and so this has kind of just shaken her whole life. And of course, her father believed in fairy lore, and then these just weird disappearances start happening. She comes across this mysterious kind of like brooding man, and she's not really sure why she's so drawn to him, finds out that he's the Fae King, and they kind of end up in this bargain together. Wow, when this is Beyond the Aching Door, aching is such an apt way to describe this book. I felt just like soul deep sorrow for these two characters, the way they just yearn for one another. The history and the lore between them was so deep. Definitely it's written a little purple prosy. I tend to like that kind of writing, but just like, be aware going into it. But wow, this book kind of blew me away because I just truly like have not read anything like it. It's like urban paranormal. The way the worlds interact is so interesting. Reagan is just like a character who she just has like a lot of feminine rage and she acts on it, and I love that. And just, oh my god, their backstory just destroyed me in the best way possible. Yearning is what this book should be called. Definitely, if you like suffering and like emotional fantasy romance reads that lean urban, definitely read this one. Speaking of another book that kind of blew me away by how like interesting and different it was, is The Consulate by Alison Carr-Weicher. This is an author I definitely need to check out more of her stuff, but this was such a cool setup. And we're following this group of warriors called the Orpheum Mare, and they're kind of sent to protect the city. And the city has just like different groups of like immortal beings. And we're also following Ares, who is the head necromancer essentially. And like what's so sad is there's some big falling out between all of the Orpheum Mare, or all of the like woman warriors that protect this city. And we're following Ember, who just is like all alone. She doesn't have friends anymore. She's just like truly just like not sure what to do, and she's just trying to hold it all together. And this book, just like, I really love the way that it explored what actually happens when you're immortal. It's not just some 18-year-old girl pulling up and is like, oh my god, here's my 500-year-old shadow daddy. Like, she's been through it in the many years she's been alive, as well as Ares also having been alive for a long time, and actually thinking through the emotional like implications of living that long, and like how their story unfurls over time, just because they have so much of it, was so interesting and so well done. I loved it. And this is, I think, going to be a world of like interconnected standalones. So when the next one comes out, I definitely am going to be reading it. And I just like, the plot was so interesting. Like this book truly, I felt like just did something new and unique that I haven't seen in a while. I'm talking about these two books, I feel like they should have been higher on the list, but there's so many good books, and I'm so excited to share them with you. This book was definitely my favorite cozy book of the year. This is The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. This is a little sapphic romance, and we're following Marigold, who doesn't really want to be involved in the Regency life, and so her grandma's like, you can take over for me as being the Honey Witch, but you can never fall in love, and that's the curse. And she's like, great, I'm never gonna fall in love anyways, until she meets Lottie, who is a very kind of like surly, doesn't believe in magic kind of girl. I just wanted to live on this island and be a honey witch, like the way that like the nature was explained. Like if you like the cottagecore aesthetic and you just want to feel like you are frolicking in a field and having an amazing time, this is the book to read. The romance was just so sweet and I really adored it, and I feel very fond of this book. Okay, next, which this is kind of shocking to me, but is Apprentice to the Villain. Assistant to the Villain was my #1 book of last year, and the fact that this didn't make my top 10 is kind of sad. I still really thoroughly enjoyed this book, but I do think the first book was stronger. We are following Evie, who is just a girl trying to get by in a medieval-esque village. She runs across this villain, literally called the Villain, and he's like, come work for me, be my assistant, and then she's kind of thrust into this office setting for a villain. It very much is like slapstick, doesn't take itself too seriously. Like if you like that kind of just like almost corny humor in your fantasy, you're gonna love it. I still really adored these characters, and I can't wait to see where this story goes. And I especially love seeing Evie kind of lean into her evilness a little bit, and the tension between Evie and the villain is amazing. Definitely, I still adored this one so much, but the first book just like truly like captivated me and blew me away. But like I cannot wait to see where the story goes, and I just feel like the series as a whole is always going to be like a comfort series for me and hold a special place in my heart. Okay, getting on to number 10, we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood. No surprise here, I am a ride or die for Ali Hazelwood. This is her first foray into paranormal, and it is werewolf with nodding. If you don't know what that is, please Google. And it is between a vampire and a werewolf, and basically Misery is the daughter of like the head vampire, and for political reasons she has to enter into a marriage with this werewolf named Lo. I loved this. Like it just had like such the trademark Ali Hazelwood like character work, and like it was just so good. Like the scenes between the two, where you just see these two people come together despite their differences and literally being different species, and like the way that they care about each other, so good. Talking about like actually exploring the implications of a mate bond beyond just like, oh my god, you're my mate, and like all is like happy forever. Like there are definitely like differences that they have because they are literally different species, and I like seeing that explored. And there was like an kind of overarching mystery plot as well, and our girl Misery, even though it is paranormal, it is still STEM. She's like a computer genius, and I just truly thought that this altogether just worked so well, and I'm obsessed with it. And I want if she writes a phone book, I'm gonna read it, and it's probably gonna end up on my top 10. Her other release of the year, Not in Love, is not on my top 10 because I didn't read it this year, because I don't know, but I do plan on reading it eventually because I love Miss Ali Hazelwood. I'm obsessed with her, autobi author. I have faith in whatever she writes, she will deliver. At number 9 is Bespelled, which is the sequel to Bewitched. This is literally like my toxic romance guilty pleasure, because this couple, they are kind of toxic, but I love them, and their dynamic again is just so unique and something that I haven't ever really seen done before. Obviously this was the book that I read this year that made the list, but I'm just gonna hold up the no, I'll hold up this one. Okay, so this is the second book. In the first book, we follow Celine, who is this witch, and she wants to get into this coven, which is basically witch college. So they're like, you have to do something like to prove your powers. So she goes on this trip to South America to do something, I don't know, and then the plane goes down while she's on her way to her trip, and she ends up saving the plane with her magic. And while that happens, she ends up in the tomb of this like ancient warrior who's been there for 2,000 years, wakes him up, and he's like, you're my wife and you spelled me to be stuck in this tomb for 2,000 years and I hate you. And she's like, I am a 20-year-old girl, what are you talking about? Her magic also, every time she uses her magic, it ends up causing gaps in her memory, so she has to be like really meticulous about like writing down like everything that happens to her so she can like read it back. It's such an interesting like plot device, and they're so kind of like toxic, but the chemistry between them is insane. The cat and mouse is insane. And then in this book in particular, we are getting a lot of groveling, and I absolutely loved it. And there is, it was supposed to be a novella, but it's gonna be a full-length novel. This was planned to be a trilogy, but there's one about, I don't even like want to say what it's about, but it's about the past, basically when Memnon was, before he was entombed, and all that entails. And I'm so intrigued to read that part of the story too. But wow, my toxic babies, honestly, I just like ate up every second of this book. I could not put it down because it just has that addictive quality that you cannot stop reading, and I am obsessed with it. Okay, now at number 8 we have Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I read this book at literally the end of the year and became obsessed with it because she is the it girl of fantasy romance for a reason. I feel like it is like every trope in fantasy romance, but just done so well that you cannot help but turn every page. And I also thought that the magic was quite interesting and unique as well. So we're following Cyrus, and she's a human just, you know, trying to get behind oppressive government, and she ends up in the queen's throne room where she pulls this sword out of this pool of silver, and the silver becomes alive and becomes a portal. And then she ends up transported into the Fey lands with this guy Kingfisher, who has like the dirtiest talking mouth ever. And now, because she has this power of Quicksilver, which has not been seen in the Fey realms in forever, they're like, okay, well, you gotta, you know, work for us and you know, help us out here. She never even thought Fae were real, and now she's kind of in the middle of a war. Like, it is such like a typical fantasy romance plot, but it's just done, I don't know what to tell you, but just something about the writing just keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting. It like, you know, the book threw a lot of the popular tropes, micro tropes, whatever, on the board, but it stuck the landing, and it's compulsively readable. And just like, if you are a fan of fantasy romance, like, this just is just, it feels like bubbly, giggly, like fun. It's just so much fun, and I understand why she is so hyped, because it just takes everything and does it right. The tension between the two characters is so good. Their spicy scenes were, they delivered, and the end had quite a twist. Kept me turning the pages. That's all I'm gonna say. Kept me turning the pages. And at the end of the day, if I am just having fun reading fantasy romance, that's what I want, because I'm here to have a good time. So she's the it girl for a reason. Me and about every other single girl on the planet that reads books probably put Lila Sage on the list, but I am putting the 3 books that are out in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. We have Done and Dusted, Swift and Saddled, and Lost and Lassoed. And I will say Lost and Lassoed is probably my favorite out of the 3, but I just enjoyed my experience overall with these books. They're just, again, addictive cowboy romance. The setting is amazing. The characters have a lot of depth to them. A lot of them are, you know, dealing with like mental health issues. Like, it just is very raw and real. It is, you know, they're not overly long, they get to the point, but the romances are so well done. And like, it, again, it's just like a smiling, giggling, kicking my feet. I just think that these books are just tied with a bow what a like good romance should be, should make me feel. And I love this series. I annotated them. Like, I just had so much fun with them. And so that is how they earned spot number 7 on the list. Do you ever read a book so good and that you feel like it changed your life that you never pick up the rest of the series because you feel like you have to be in the right headspace for it? Because that's what happened to me with Thrown in the Dark by Ike Kajiano. Oh my god, I adored this book so much, and I just felt like I had to like truly be in a place to like read my favorite series of all time to continue on with the series, and then I never continued on. So that is something we are addressing in 2025. And I might reread this one because I loved it. If you really liked Assistant to the Villain and you want a fantasy romance that is funny, look to this book. We are following Alma. She's a thief and she ends up kind of magically bound to Damien, who is the dark half demon guy who's trying to, you know, take over the world or whatever, or so he says. He thinks he's evil, but is he really? I don't know. And Alma is just like the most sunshiny person ever. Like, it definitely is truly grumpy sunshine, but just again done in a way that doesn't feel forced. And they set off on magical adventures, and it was just hilarious. The tension between these two is so good. It is definitely a slow burn. Like, I don't think there's like a true spicy scene until the 3rd book, but there's like stuff that happens that like very clearly this book is adult. Like, it's not written for a younger audience, and the humor is just funny, and I truly just like loved it. And if you want funny fantasy romances, definitely look to the series. Again, I felt like it was so perfect that I couldn't continue, and I need to get over the feeling that like everything in my life has to be perfect to read my new favorite book to continue on with this series. But yeah, I did like an ultimate reading vlog where I like transferred over my annotations and like did all this stuff and just sung my praises about this book because I just loved it so much. And that is how Thrown in the Dark ended up at spot number 6. In spot number 5, we have all of the Crowns of Nyaxia books by Carissa Broadbent, all of the ones that are out so far. I read all of them this year. I read War of Lost Hearts last year. Literally, that series is so amazing. Definitely check it out. But this is her first foray into traditional publishing, and I read all of them. Spoiler alert, you might see that in my TBR Cart Diaries video coming out. Truly, I am obsessed with all of them. The first duet is Serpent and the Wings of Night, Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. This follows Araya, who is the human daughter of the Vampire King, and Rain, who is a human who was turned into a vampire that like truly is just trying to retain his humanity. They enter into these trials. I love them. The trials were so fun, and just Carissa Broadbent's writing is just so good. I don't know how to describe it. So good. And this is the little novella of Between Vale and Lilith, and it's almost a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And again, I loved it. The character work is so good. The way that she can just like build a world and like describe it is just amazing. And then the latest book that came out is The Songbird and the Heart of Stone. I feel like this book got mixed reviews, but I feel like that kind of always happens when a popular book comes out. I liked it, okay? I really enjoyed Misha's character depth and liked her exploration of like Misha's loyalty to the sun god, even though maybe he doesn't like deserve it. And like Asar, his story is just crazy, and like the descent into the underworld was so cool. Definitely kind of gave very like trial like feelings, and then the way that these two characters just like come together is just amazing. I had a lot of fun with it. The ending left me shook, and I am interested to see where this goes, because even though we are following different characters, like I still think like they're all gonna intertwine in like the overarching story, and I'm so interested to see what ends up happening. So I, again, like Carissa Broadbent is just one of my favorite authors. I just feel like her writing is just so beautiful. Her character studies are so interesting, and again, she just truly strikes that balance between plot, world building, romance, spice, where it is just perfectly balanced, and I love her so much. At spot number 4, we have Fantasma by Kaylee Smith. This was kind of going viral on Book Talk. I freaking adored this book, okay? I adored it. It is following Ophelia. She kind of has to follow her sister, who's like, hey, I'm going to sign up for these deadly trials to help us with our money problems, and runs off into this like house of devils that holds a competition with, you know, actual demons. And Ophelia has just inherited her mother's necromancer magic, and Ophelia really struggles with OCD, and I think a reason that this book struck a chord with me is because I have faced similar struggles in the past, and I think reading this I was like, oh, like that's what it was. So it definitely got very emotional for me at times because I was like, oh my god. Uh, but it was just like such a well done like representation, and it's interesting to see like how it tied in to the world. And then her love interest Blackwell is one of these spirits that is tied to this trials house. And oh my god, okay, he's basically like, if you were like, let's make Danny Phantom into the love interest for a fantasy romance, that is what this book does. He's basically Danny Phantom in my mind, but like grown up. I loved it. I just thought like the trials were so fun, like the haunted house element was so fun, like there was almost like a little bit of a horror thrown in there. The tension between the two characters was so good. I loved it. The ending, I will say, maybe it was like slightly rushed, and I have seen that floating around. To me, I love the rest of the book so much that I can understand that that is a problem some people have with it. I don't care. I still love this book so, so much, and I'm thinking that we will get more explanation in like the further books, even if it's not following this couple. Like, I don't know what the overarching plans for the series are, so, you know, like if there is going to be more and it's going to be explained later, I'm like totally okay with that. But even seeing the book on its own, I still think it gives a complete enough story that I am satisfied with it, and I just truly like just loved it. I just had so much fun with it. So if you just want like an addictive, fun fantasy romance, definitely check this one out. Okay, going on to the top 3. I cannot believe I do not own these books yet. I will be purchasing physical copies soon, but you know, I'm trying to be good about my book buying, so this is, again, books that I will pick up eventually when I am trying to do kind of like a game for myself where I have to read certain amounts of books on my physical TBR to buy more books, although I did already read the series, so I don't know. I might just end up picking it up. But especially because it is in my number 3 spot, and that is Kiss of Iron and Touch of Poison by Claire Sager. Okay, the love I feel for these books is just so deep because truly I felt like I was the main character. And let me explain. Our main girly pop, her name is Catherine. She is a redhead and she's a mid-sized curvy girly. Literally all 3 of those things apply to me. If you don't know, my full name is Catherine. I don't go by it, but that is truly like my legal name. And so I was just like, I am her, and I can just like live my main character moment following Catherine, and she is kind of stuck in this marriage in this Regency-esque human world, and like her husband's never home, but she like really has no power to end the marriage or leave it, and she gets embroiled in this plot and has to go to the palace and act as a spy on the visiting Fae prince named Bastian, who is tall, dark, and handsome, and is a shadow daddy. And yes, it is the classic shadow daddy trope. I don't care because it's so well done. And, you know, like, she has to basically, like, seduce him and spy on him. Oh my god. Like, her character journey is just so well done. And we love a man who is obsessed with a curvy woman's thighs. That's all I'm going to say. It made me feel seen. Kat's character journey is amazing. The like spying on each other and like that kind of, you know, dynamic of cat and mouse was just so much fun. In the second book, we kind of changed settings, and there's something that happens to Kat that like she truly has to like work through this emotional journey, and like her emotional journey is just so amazing. Also with Bastian's too, like they have baggage and they like truly work through it, and they're like I'm just obsessed with these 2 books. Like, I just find, again, like, chef's kiss, fantasy romance perfection, so well done. I feel like I cannot even properly express my love for these books because they are just so good. They're just so good, and I am obsessed with them. And I feel like the more I love a book, the like less coherent I am about it, but like truly this series is amazing. The 3rd and final book in the trilogy did just release, and I will hopefully be reading it soon and then picking up a copy because this is one of my favorite series. And spot number 2 are the 2 final books in the Legends of Thesmar series that I read this year, and that is Fate and Furies and Shadow and Storms. I don't think I vlogged any of my experience reading these books, so I don't know if you guys know like how deep my love for the Legends of Thesmar series is. But it's just so good. We're in this world where basically women are outlawed from holding steel and wielding weapons because of a prophecy that a woman wielding a blade is gonna, you know, bring doom to the world. We're following Thea, who is an orphan who lives in this fortress, and she's like, I don't care, I want to be a warrior. And the war sword, which is kind of like the God-given title to these ultimate warriors. This disgruntled warsword Wilder Hawthorne comes to the fortress, and Thea kind of finds her way to get him to mentor her in becoming a warrior. What I truly love about this series is that like Thea does not start the series just as this girl that just knows how to fight and is amazing. Like you truly see her develop these skills over the course of the novel, and you know, you just see her like truly like step into herself, and I just really enjoyed being on the character journey with her. These final two books, like just seeing it all come to a head, and like I just love all the side characters. I love this world so much. And good news, because there's a spin-off series coming following Thea's sister, the first book being Iron and Embers. Like this series as a whole, not even just these last two books, like I just think about it and I'm just like, this is like very well done fantasy romance where the character journeys are amazing, the plot is amazing, it's balanced with spice and romance, and it just hits all of the right notes for me, and I just absolutely adore it, eat it up, can't get enough. And what I also really appreciate about this is that the author is able to keep up the tension between the main characters, so that even though it is 4 books, there is always something that is keeping the angst and the tension alive between the main characters so that it doesn't feel stale. Because if I feel like sometimes if the characters are like together for too long, like it can be hard to keep it interesting, and you never want to get to a point where you're like, okay, like why do I care? Like and like truly like every single time like they were like touching hands, I was like, oh my god, their hands are brushing, what does it mean? And like just being able to keep the tension alive in the main relationship and the main couple over a pretty chunky 4-book series, I think is a feat that needs to be talked about. But yeah, just like Thea's journey is just amazing, and so is all the other characters, especially Wilder too. Like he goes through a lot, like they all go through a lot. The side characters are funny, like I just love this whole world, all of these characters, and I'm just gonna continue to read these books and love them and speak about them. And then the book in number 1 is surprisingly one of the last books I read of the year, and that book is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This book became kind of viral, I want to say in like January of 2024. Oh my god, look at all my tabs, I color coded them, I love it. For a reason. I started this book and I was like, oh, like yeah, I'm gonna need to annotate this. And like just the writing is very, very beautiful. If you are a fan of purple flowery prose, like you will like this book. I didn't find that it weighed down the text too much though. It had beautiful descriptions, and oh my god, like just like if you want your characters to go through angst, pining, yearning, like and have a lot of obstacles in their way, like the main couple in this book definitely goes through it, but there's also such an interesting overarching fantasy plot and really, really cool world building. If you like are down for like a little bit more of an intricate world than maybe we're normally used to seeing in romantasy, I think that you will enjoy this. I will say there is a glossary in the beginning. It is helpful to read that before you start reading the rest of the book, but I love this. We're following Rave. She is an assassin, and she kind of finds herself imprisoned, and then who shows up to her prison but this guy, Khan. And Khan, you know, has been crushed by like losing the love of his life, and he is just kind of on a quest to try and fill the gaping hole, essentially. And he somehow stumbles upon an imprisoned Rave, and their story goes from there. I literally don't want to spoil it for you. And in this world there are also dragons, and when they die they like fly up into the sky and calcify and become moons. So this like just the whole way the whole world is set up is just so interesting, like definitely like thought out very, very well. And oh my god, the suffering that this couple goes through, it just hit me in all the feels. I was like emotional reading it. I was just like, oh my god, there are so many themes in here that I think are without spoiling, I would say like underutilized and underexplored in fantasy romance, but like wow. I feel like it's going, especially in the books, continuing is going to pack an emotional punch. Like when you learn about Niia, oh my god, when you learn about what it actually means, when you learn about like what When the Moon Hatched actually means, like are you kidding? Like the way the author is able to like craft the story, that these reveals have such like an emotional punch with them, it was just so amazing. Like I truly, I don't think I've read anything like it. It blew me away, honestly. I was just so impressed with this book, and it is definitely like solidified itself as one of my absolute new favorites, and at the end of the year swooped in there and took the #1 spot of my favorite book of the year. And if you want to cry, read this book, because there were definitely some tears shed. So that is my top 10 books of 2024. Let me know down below. I want to hear from you guys what your favorite books of 2024 are. If you've read any of these, what you think about them. I would honestly just like really love to interact with you guys in the comments. And if you don't have anything to say but you want to let me know that you watched, leave a little dragon emoji. And have some fun, read some books, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.